women bear the brunt of conflict and poverty. They have to raise children, they have to feed children, they have to watch children die of preventable diseases. And I did not, I said, no, I'm not going to
Yeah.
sit here and watch that.
Hi everyone, Elle Ballard is here today with you, Empowered Global Women in Business podcast. Welcome, Susan, my special guest today, Susan Burgess-Lent. So Susan is an author, veteran humanitarian worker, warrior for women, founder of Women's Center International, which I want to talk about. She's a public speaker, she's an author, she served as the program director of Darfur Peace and Development Organization, and she's just been in a nonprofit world. And I can see you, and I can see and feel you have a big heart, Susan. Welcome to our podcast. Looking
Thank you.
forward to this conversation today. Thank you for taking the time. Share with us what brought you to do this work today, why you chose this field.
Interesting question. I followed my heart. I think that's what it was. I was
Yeah.
very concerned. I worked in television for many years, and
Hmm.
I would see a lot of what was happening around the world and go, what could
Mm.
I do to uh, help? Originally, I met a man who is a Darfuri. Right now, Sudan is a complete basket case. It's a real bad mess. And so he's come back to me after 20 years and said, "You want to help me again?" And I agreed. But the the experience in the mid 2000s working in Darfur when the first genocide occurred opened my eyes to what women need in conflict situations. Women's Women bear the brunt of conflict and poverty. They have to raise children, they have to feed children, they have to watch children die of preventable diseases. And I said, no, I'm not going to
Yeah.
sit here and watch that. So the women in Darfur actually taught me everything that I needed to know to start Women's Centers International, which in its essence, you create a safe space for women. You bring resources to that place and you tell them, here's an array of things that you can learn. Here is a safe place where you can learn, you can interact with other women, you can get a lot of support for what you do. And these centers, we have 6 centers now. What I see is that the women want, first of all, to learn a skill that will help them earn better income. Many women who live in poverty, who live in slums, their career options are wash laundry, clean house. We have a bigger horizon here. And admittedly, many of these women are also not particularly well educated. They did not, in many cases, even finish primary school. So
Hmm.
you need to meet them where they are with the skills that interest them. And those skills tend to be things like sewing. We got some amazing designers that got let loose at one of the centers where we said, "Would you like to learn how to sew?" And oh my gosh, the stuff that produced, I was just blown away. They start
Oh,
business,
wow.
new skills. And there's a group of women that do extraordinary beaded necklaces and
Yeah.
also practical skills like computer. They don't have access to computer except at the center, but they need to learn if they want to get like a secretary job or whatever kind of job. So we're
Yeah.
we're meeting them where they are with their level of education on which they can then build small businesses. They're hugely entrepreneurial, but they don't know what they don't know. So we
Yeah.
had to sort of back up from, okay, great, you have this wonderful new skill of sewing. Now let's teach you how to run a business. And what do you need to think about when you need to look at your market, your pricing, the kind of products you produce. And that was a revelation to most of the women. They would usually think, well, I'll just set out my table on the street here and hope for the best. No, they really did learn a lot of wonderful things about
It's
how
great.
to make sales.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my heart is with these what I call invisible women. We never see them. They live in poverty. They live in refugee camps. We have a whole group right now
Mm,
in a refugee camp that has like 180,000 people in it. It's
wow.
in Kenya on the border with Sudan. And these women, you know what they wanted to learn? How to read. They did not
Mm,
know how to read. And so, okay, literacy is it. Once you get that, we'll do
yeah,
also money management. How do you count? How do you
yeah, yeah,
add up your money? And so
yeah.
we have to back up sometimes to really basic skills. And I'm happy about that to be able to say, oh, because here we assume, okay, you definitely finished high school. You probably went to college or university. Not there. And so uh, there's a lot of work to do, and I find it exhilarating when one of
Yeah.
the women steps out and makes a big splash in her work, in her life. She changes
Mm-hmm.
the life of her entire extended
I see
family.
that. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you for all the work. And thank you for taking us. I was going to ask about this organization. So thank you for taking us into that experience. And wow, amazing, amazing. I have not heard about this organization. And
Most entrepreneurs, access to capital is a real concern. You need money to make money. And the same holds true for nonprofit organizations. There are, I don't know how many thousands of them in the US.
yeah,
Uh,
a lot. Yeah.
and you're competing for what shouldn't really be a limited number of dollars. I think that when people want to help, you give them a clear opportunity and say, you know what, $10, we get enough $10, we can actually do another class in whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, but one thing I do have to say is that funding for women, for services to women, both in this country and overseas, is about 2% of total
Hmm.
philanthropic dollars. 2% to women. And so we're, I
Yeah.
can tell you how discouraging that can be. In any event, I think that, it's up to women to support other women. That's my firm belief is that
Yes.
our dark side, of course, is competitiveness. But when we get together and support one another, amazing things happen. And I've seen it at the women's centers, just
Hmm. Yeah, yes, I agree. I agree. When we come together and we help raise other women up together with us. Yeah,
exactly.
and it's beautiful. Yeah, I like to say I love living now in this time to watch this global movement of women, global women rising up everywhere, and it's interesting time to.
It
But
is an
of course, there
interesting.
is so much time, so much work still needs to be done, and yeah, yeah,
But let me tell you something I just learned. I
yeah.
read a lot. I get a lot of stuff from listservs. And this one was called, the headline was Gender Equality is Slipping. And I thought there had been some progress, and now we're on a backward slide for gender
Mhm.
equity. And I'm thinking, how can we be on a backward slide? How can that be possible? And
Yeah.
it has to do with money. It comes down to money. Where is the money invested? And it's not enough of it in women, whether they're for-profit entrepreneurs, they're learning a skill. There's not enough money in the game for women.
Mm.
Until that happens, we won't gain any kind of parity. We imagine that, we have a lot of rights in this country, and they're fairly well protected, except we don't get equal pay. There is a complete epidemic of violence against women, not just here,
Mhm.
but in many countries, all kinds of violence, domestic violence, rape.
Yeah.
And so my feeling has been with the women's centers is you're dealing with a traumatized population going in. Part of the training really involves mental health support. Kind of groups that say, we experience this, we're going to talk about it here in this safe place. So that's a component of women's centers that is relatively new over the last, say, 3 years, that we really
Mm-hmm.
drill down on mental health and trauma
Mm-hmm.
intervention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
That's how you
Mm-hmm.
bring women on board, in the mainstream society. You heal them first.
It's so important. It's so true. Education, knowledge is so important, and that's actually my goal. Is That's where I would plan to
I can see
be
that.
in being able to invest. Yeah, to invest in women businesses and really support. And I'm glad that you went there. I'm glad you talked about it because there are so many sides to it. And as we rise, all this side needs to be taken care of, right? As we continue to
Right.
rise further. We usually talk about different women businesses, and I love that you touched on money because I think it's just so important and it's so true. Yeah, for businesses to strive, non-profit or for profit, doesn't matter, um, to get to the next level. And the foundational knowledge was not given to us, and so we are
Right.
having to figure it out. Yeah,
Right.
and not only personal finance but business, right? Finance and all of
Mhm.
the money management as a so that's another huge area of knowledge that needs to be given
Yeah.
and
We had
educated on
money.
it.
And there's another part of this too that I deal with in my own life, even though I feel like an accomplished woman. I've done a lot in my life that I'm happy with and proud of. But
Mhm.
ultimately, for most of us, there's that little voice in the back of our head that says, you're not worthy. You're not good enough. And you
Mhm.
have to beat that back with a stick, you know?
Yep.
It's encoded in the way that women are raised to be
Yeah.
deferential, to be, accommodating, to be second class to the
Hmm.
boys and
Hmm.
and I don't think that we can understate how significant that is for women to overcome that voice
Yeah.
that beats them
Yeah.
down. Some
Hmm.
some of us, it shows up every day and you go, "Ugh, get out of here." Comes back to the support among other women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this mental support, not just mental support in a sense where we overcome or learn how to overcome the self-sabotage, right? And the interesting thing when I looked at it, also, it doesn't matter how much we have already achieved or this she already achieved, this individual, that voice always comes up.
You're right.
It's
It's so
right. And so
stubborn.
it's so stubborn, so you have to remind ourselves to of our own wins that we already tackled previously, that we already done, and we are just so powerful, and we just don't fully realize that
Yeah,
how powerful we actually truly are.
yeah.
So that's yeah, I love this conversation, and that we're talking about all this. And I want to talk about you building this community and building something that is not locally where you are is a huge challenge. Considering the different territories, different languages, different time zones.
Absolutely right. Cultural
How do
differences.
you Cultural differences, right? How do you tackle or how have you built that? And what are some of the maybe lessons
Good
that you could
question.
share with our listeners? Yeah.
Before I say that, we did
Yes.
have a women's center in Oakland, 2015 to
Hmm.
2018. It was a wonderful place. And the reason it does not any longer exist is quite simply money. We could not, it
Yeah.
was the most expensive center. It cost about 3 times as much as anything in Kenya or Uganda, where we also work, because of salaries primarily. Um,
Yeah.
a good salary in East Africa, like $700 or $800 a month.
Hmm. Hmm.
Costs are different.
Yep.
That said, let me circle back to your question. I had come to know some people in Nairobi. I went to them and said, I have a model that
Hmm.
I'm working on that I learned from the women in Sudan. I want to bring it here to Nairobi. Anybody interested? And the first day that we had a meeting, and it was in a slum, a tiny slum, about 300 women showed up. Now, these women I know to be, if a good opportunity presents, I am first in line. You see an opportunity for the possibility that it will help change your life. It built from there. Now that center has spun off a second center, up country in the Maasai territory. Together they have, let's see, how many do they have? It's like almost 4,000 members. It's huge. And then these women show up and they walk long distances in some cases
Oh,
to
wow.
just learn something, to be with
Amazing.
somebody.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
these centers, and my position has been finally after I realized all the things that Baraka Center, which is the one in Kenya, had taught me, I wrote a guide, the Women's Centers Guide, that says
Hmm.
this is how you do it. This is how you set up a women's center. All the centers have that as sort of a template for, this is the business model. Now you can not do it this way. You can, improvise over here. But basically, you've got to cover these areas, uh, human resources, fundraising. It's got 14 sections, each with information about how do you do this from the
Yeah.
beginning. How do you do this?
Right. How do you set it all? There's so many things to think about, right?
Unbelievable number of details. The good part is that I trusted these women. Take it and run with it. And that's
Run with it.
exactly what they did.
Mm.
Now, I don't need to
Hmm.
get in the way at this point of a well-functioning center and tell them to do things
Yeah.
differently. They've already set it up. They send reports and say, here's what's happening, with the money that we would send them or they got from somewhere else. There's one place in Uganda called the Dreams Destined Women's Center. They run with it. They really do. Now they've gone from this sewing operation that the women all wanted their own sewing machines and tricky about managing assets. Now they're raising goats. I thought,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
okay.
Yeah.
What for me? Milk? What are you doing?
Yeah. 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 Right. I was gonna ask. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're free to spot what is a need in the
Yeah.
local group and
Mm.
say, here we go. There's a center in Zimbabwe has created a fairly large garden on
Hmm.
on on pristine land. This is virgin land. It hasn't been used for agriculture. And I thought, whoa, how rare is that? And there's like 40 women who have learned what they need to know about growing crops, using tools, planting seeds, keeping the bugs away. And they call this thing, I love the name of it, it's Mushandira Pamwe, which means working together garden. And the
Oh,
main thing for all the centers is that they name them. It's their center. I'm
mm.
not telling them what to call it.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
So they really truly own it.
they got to own it. Otherwise, it's not
Yep.
going to. So it's this flowering. Once you provide basic tools and money is no small part of this. The flowering that's possible just takes my breath away. And I got to also say, just this year in April, I had been grooming my successor, and she took over in April. And
Oh,
I'm kind
great.
of on the sidelines. That's another thing you've got to do with your business. Make sure
Yep.
somebody's carry it forward. And it's a little rough getting used to it, and I'm still kind of on call when things blow up or whatever happens. But there's a great satisfaction for me in knowing that she cares at least as much as I do, at least maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be the right
So
person.
yeah, and,
Mm.
and that's a point
Yeah.
with the business too, is planning your successor. That comes later for young people, but you can't ever think, I've got plenty of years left to do this. You don't know. You don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Hmm.
And
That's
so
good.
everything that you do that works, you got to document it and say, this is
Hmm.
how I did it. This is why I did it. You carry forward the wisdom that
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
and share with
Hmm.
other women. I'm a complete open source person. You want to know something? Ask me. I'll tell you
Hmm.
if I
Hmm.
know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's so important. Having an
Yeah,
yeah,
and
having
she's going to have to at some point also develop a succession plan too. It's you
yeah,
learn as you go. How do you hand this over?
I love that suggestion. So you either prepare to continue, you measure, or you prepare
Say
to
I've done
close
what I
it, or
Yeah.
or restructure, you did what you can. And yeah, I love that. Thank you for that, Susan, and thank you for sharing. I would love to share a link with our listeners to your organization, maybe, or how they can contribute to it or read more about it. I'd love to do that. I'd love to bring more awareness into that, and for those who are able to contribute as well. So this is Empowered Global Women in Business podcast. And I launched the organization about 5 years ago called Women of the World Network to support multinational women in business, but really women from all over the world. We have women from all over the world because we are all women of the world. So my question is, what does it mean for you to be a woman of the world?
That's a good question too. I think that we have to honor the things that inspire us or uh, provoke our curiosity. It's like I wanted to know what it was like for these women in Africa, and not just generic Africa, but all the places that we have a center. I wanted to know what their life was
Yeah.
like. And that curiosity is the thing that will tell you you're in your groove. You are curious and excited about this. That's where you go. And there's going to be impediments, but that, to me, the women's centers was my purpose. The women in it was funny story, short story. The women in Darfur, we met, and I said, okay, when this ends and you go home, what are you going to do? You set this
Mm-hmm.
wonderful center up here. And they said, we're going to build women's centers. And I thought, oh, they own it. Oh my gosh, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Oh,
Sometimes people tell you, this is what you're up to, and you
yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
so, follow the joy is my,
Yes.
and that
I
doesn't
love
mean there
that.
won't be
Yeah.
really awful periods where you think, what am I thinking? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But on balance, following the thing that really motivates you is where you'll get the most traction,
Mm,
whether it's a
yes.
product, a service, a way to do things.
And I so agree with you. I talk about it in my Free, Fulfilled, and Fabulous, where I bring the dance part of it, where I connect mind and body. And so I love to feel it in my body. And so it's so interesting because our body knows, like we really know if we listen, if we pause and listen to it, and that's what you are saying, that joy, what inspires you. Sometimes when I'm even thinking or I'm putting something, and then I have this feeling, this overwhelmed feeling of, joy and happiness and excitement, I know I'm on the right
Yeah,
track here, right?
exactly.
And so I love how you share that, because I think sometimes we just go, 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 or we are doing something, doing for the sake of doing. But we don't really know if we want to continue doing it,
Can we
right?
kick,
Or
yeah, can we kick
yeah,
back and enjoy it for a minute and just say,
yes,
this is
just
great.
yeah, I
And
love
I
it.
think
Yes,
women of the world, it's really important for us, all of us, to connect
yes,
around the
hmm,
world because the plight of women in other places is really, really much worse.
yeah,
In places
yeah,
like Middle East,
yeah,
Afghanistan, they got the
hmm,
Taliban still running women.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, we have to pick a battle sometimes and
yeah,
say, oh, I'm all in on this particular group that's working for rights of women in blank, name a place.
hmm,
And that's the way we share both our wisdom and our best energy with other
yeah,
women,
hmm,
is to
yeah,
support their struggle to get on the other side of you know pretty serious long-term repression. Being a woman of the world is the best thing you can be because you have a very long horizon. There's no place you couldn't think about going at some point
yeah,
if they invited
yeah.
you, if you had, I don't tend to go to places where I don't know anybody because I kind
Yeah.
of like a little help getting into things. But I have a huge list of places I still want to travel.
Thank you so much, Susan, and so much wisdom in what you're sharing. I just really I'm enjoying this conversation. So thank you so much sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience, your journey, your lessons. I'm going to move us to the final part of this conversation is rapid fire questions. Your favorite book name is?
Book? Oh,
Uh-huh.
Cutting for Stone.
I have to write that down. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Favorite international destination to visit?
I really like Kenya. I've been there many times and I
Hmm.
still like it.
I've heard so many great things about Kenya. Haven't been myself, but on my list for sure.
Well, the economy's kind of tanked, but you can't beat their safari. And they have
Nice.
multiple national parks. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, summer or winter?
Fall.
Right. Okay, my final question is things that you have discovered about yourself recently.
I'm kind of stubborn. Well, I haven't discovered that, but it keeps coming up that you are kind of stubborn, that I don't have a lot of patience anymore for stupidity. I mean, just really stupid behavior.
Yeah.
I have to walk away when
Mm,
I see stuff.
yeah.
My city has gotten out of hand with
Hmm.
stupid stuff. Um,
Hmm.
so learning to walk away is a really good.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you so much for taking the time to
Oh,
be with
thank
us
you for
today,
inviting me.
Susan. And we will post links on how to connect with Susan in if you're watching YouTube video, we'll post it in the comments or in our podcast as well. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.